Hi. Welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner, senior film writer for Now Magazine, and this is the other thing I do. My guest this week is Saul Williams, an author, actor, poet, and hip-hop pioneer who's performed with everyone from Allen Ginsberg to the Fugees. He made his big screen debut as the lead of Mark Levin's indie drama Slam in 1998. Last year, he starred in and scored Charles Officer's Akilla's Escape, a thriller about a mid-level drug runner who finds himself at a crossroads after a botched robbery. It just won 5 Canadian Screen Awards last month, and it's available on VOD across North America today. You should watch it. Saul picked Lovers Rock, the second feature in Steve McQueen's Small Axe collection of films about England's West Indian diaspora. This one is set over a day and a night in 1980, where a few dozen people gathered for a dance party in a West London house. It's an immersive, almost experiential film with the camera moving through the crowd, capturing moments of joy, anger, connection, friction, pretty much everything, really. It's like nothing McQueen's ever attempted before, and it also kind of feels like the best thing he's ever done. Maybe that's why. This is Someone Else's Movie.
I chose Lovers Rock because I feel like Akilla's Escape and Charles and all of his humility, I believe that this film is in a sense in conversation with a film like Lovers Rock, which focuses on, once again, Jamaican migration. This time in Lovers Rock to the UK, to London, whereas Akilla's Escape focused on the Jamaican migration to the US and Canada. Charles's interest in music in Akilla's Escape is you see it in the intro of the film, like the way that music ties into that story and throughout the film, and in what me and Robert Del Naja were working on in the score and what have you. Lovers Rock is a masterwork, right? Clearly and simply a masterwork in storytelling, in images and their relation to music, in bringing out the spirit, the true spirit of the music and how it touches and reaches people. And it's a wondrous journey, it's a very short film. I think it's 72 minutes or something, it's a wondrous journey just into a party, into one night, where we see, the speakers and the party being set up and the people starting to trickle in, and what happens when that sound system starts working. And my favorite parts of that film are revolve around how the music affects the body language and the storytelling, what it brings out in the people, and how Steve McQueen was able to capture that in its essence. It's such a powerful statement. One, just because the role that reggae, that roots music from Jamaica, plays in the broader spectrum of music, in the broader spectrum of, I will say, even science fiction, because, we're talking about the invention of the echo machine. We're talking about, the invention of dub. We're talking about the invention and enhancement of what we can expect from an electric bass, and the idea of the space sound, right? And in that sense, even before a term like Afrofuturism is coined, the music represents that. And there's something in that relationship to the overbearing colonial presence of the reason why Jamaicans end up migrating to Jamaica or the States or Canada, versus the strength of that music, and in the sense of Lovers Rock, the strength of that story, of that glimpse into a world, into a night. It's such a interesting relationship, music and film. Because, and I don't want to overstep, what is allowed to be said, but I've been thinking about the fact that in a sense, music doesn't need film.
Sure. Yeah. I mean,
you can put on a song and close your eyes, and that's enough. Mm-hmm. In fact, it's more than enough.
Yeah.
It illuminates a world, whether, a director is present or not. But cinema benefits greatly from music. And the combination of that, when it's masterfully done, just lifts the human experience. I mean, that is the reason why we have the popularity of musicals, whether, in the Anglophone, film format or in India and across the world. The connection of music with images and storytelling somehow brings us closer to a celebration of humanity.
I see what you mean. I mean, the standard line on musicals for me has always been that people burst into song when spoken words simply can't contain the passion or the emotion that they're trying to express. But it also works non-diegetically, obviously, soundtracks and things that can goose an image. But then there's something like Lovers Rock, where at the end of the film there is a score credit, which I had completely missed. I didn't notice anything that wasn't being played by the characters, but it's there.
It's there
to just flow it along a little bit better. And it's so unlike anything else McQueen has ever done.
Yeah,
I mean, I think about Hunger and Shame and 12 Years a Slave, where the music is used almost surgically, right? To underscore something, literally, obviously underscore something, but to make his points in just a tiny more precise way. Or something like Widows, where there's constant radio music pouring in to tell us which universe we're in, like whose worlds we're watching, in the stratification of that movie's narrative. And then he does Small Acts, and they're 5 feature films, and they're all they're all clearly made by him. They're all Steve McQueen projects, and they have a consistent vision. But this is so unlike anything else because it is just, I hesitate to use the word ethnography because that sounds like I'm putting them at arm's length, the characters, that I can't relate to the characters in any way. But he is really showing us the way that immigrant culture has clarified into this little space where everyone can finally stop pretending to be assimilated. They can revert to patois or whichever tones that they want to use with each other. There's stuff they do together that they don't do elsewhere in the world. And we're just plopped in there with the camera and allowed to experience it. And it doesn't matter if I catch every reference because the meaning is clear. And the sense, I mean, again, like his silly games scene, which goes on for something like 9 or 10 minutes, and apparently just happened, according to all the notes I've read. They didn't plan for it to go that long. The actors just got into it and wouldn't stop. And there
exactly. You feel that.
Yeah.
And that's the power of music. And that's why I would say, even that it may be his most personal film, or the film that is closest to his heart, as music, with its drum beat is always close to the heart. It's true that in the strictest terms, a musical is there, like you said, where the music and the songs come in, where in the spaces where the words, won't do it justice, where the simple dialogue won't do it justice. Of course, one of my favorite musicals actually is a film called Once, for example.
Oh, yeah.
And which I consider a revolutionary musical because the music in that film happens in real time as it happens in our life. Like if I were to say, yo, have you heard this song? Check it out. And I play it, and the course of us listening to that song is in the film in real time. And Lovers Rock is, you know, corresponding with that idea as well, is that we have these songs in real time, and we're living through the moment, just as the actors were, you know, with that silly game scene, which is just groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he knew it would work, right? That's the thing that amazes me about McQueen, is his absolute confidence in pulling off the stuff he's attempting. He's not doing anything truly radical, I don't think, other than just letting the camera run and trusting his actors. As a director in the moment, I think that's something people do. But then just letting it go, and then putting it in the film and letting it go, and not worrying about cutting it out or cutting around it, and just letting it move and build and breathe.
I think the radical act when it comes to, you know, a lot of Black cinema is in revealing, you know, us in our most relaxed and truest form. We've been so overwhelmed and bombarded with caricatures, you know, of you know, people from our various communities and diaspora communities, that when you get a taste of something real, and to be able to break through the barriers and the gatekeepers and the producers and are able to get something real in a film that truly represents a true visceral response, whether it's to music or an idea or what have you, through and from the Black experience, that in itself is the radical act, you know? And so I see a film like Lovers Rock as a radical act in its entirety, you know?
Yeah,
in its entirety, you know, in terms of narrative, story structure, in terms of cinematography, in terms of sound, and in terms of freedom, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, I've spoken to McQueen a few times over the years, and he's just his energy is so. That's the other thing that strikes me about Lovers Rock. It is calm and groovy in a way that he is not. He's a big agitated guy. I watched him become incredibly uncomfortable with the photographer, not in a negative, like he wasn't angry or offended that his picture was being taken. It was a photo session, but you could feel that he was responding to the moments. Like if it had been his finger on the shutter, it would have snapped then. And you could just kind of feel him just itching to get it right. And his sense of movement as a person is so weirdly opposed to the movies he makes, because he does these gorgeous patient shots and these gliding cameras. And there's a serenity to a lot of his work that it does not come out of him at all. It's clearly a conscious effort to create it. And that is,
you know, I think that's true of a lot of people who touch that level of mastery in their craft. I mean, as you were speaking, I was thinking of someone like Miles Davis, you know, whose work expresses this unique vulnerability in its sound, you know.
Yeah.
And it may not be the reportage that we have of that guy off stage, right?
Yeah.
I recently read Cicely Tyson's autobiography, which is perhaps the first time that I was able to look at Miles Davis in that light of being very much like his music, because all the other reportage was about this guy who was this way or that way, but she was like, no, he was soft. He was the most gentle heart I ever met. You know, and but yeah, I understand that dichotomy between, you know, the person, the director, who's this way, but they're that way in order to achieve that stillness, in order to achieve that serenity, and which is why, you know, a film like that is a gift. It's a gift to the viewer. It's a gift to us, which to me is the highest form of sharing, whether it's in cinema or any art form, when the work gives you so much and you personally did nothing to earn it. You did nothing to earn it. And thank you, Steve McQueen, you know, for such a kind act. And I'd have a similar feeling with Charles and Akilla's Escape, you know, where he, you know Charles personally as I do, and such a big, warm heart that he has, you know, and the story that he chooses to tell and the way that he chooses to tell it, for those of us who are touched by it, it is once again a gift. It's thank you. Thank you for putting the story in this light. Thank you for you know, the level of attention and intention that you put into the story. Yeah, it's a gift.
That's definitely how I felt about something like Unarmed Verses, where he just captures a moment of connection and trust between a young artist and a mentor that I remember watching it and thinking, I shouldn't be here. Like, it's so intimate that I shouldn't actually be looking at this. This is the creation of this bond, this thing that's happening. They're making art together. It's actually kind of similar to watching Once, now that I think about it, because that's also my favorite kind of musical. It's the moment where you see creation happen, not just the experience of listening, but the experience of finding. Exactly. There's a TV series. It's on Peacock in the US, and I think it's on Showcase in Canada, called We Are Lady Parts, about a group of Muslim 20-somethings forming a punk band in London. And it is so much fun, and it's smart, and it's lively, and it allows these women to exist on a spectrum of personality. It absolutely doesn't care about Muslim identity as a monolith. It explores every angle. And watching Lovers Rock, I was feeling a connection there as well, because it's that moment of, I guess the only way I would describe it is honesty, right? When there's nothing else but what's happening, and there's no point, the relationship that forms over the course of the movie is pure and honest, and it's based on it. There's attraction, but then there's also that moment where people see who the other is and fall in love instead of just being drawn to each other.
Yeah, and I think that's something, it's something I look for as well, that type of honesty, and it's something that I think some people might have a hard time articulating in relationship to fiction, you know? Sure. Because usually when we talk about honesty in filmmaking or what have you, I guess we go to the idea of reality and documentary making and all that, but it can't. But honesty is something I look for in a film, even and especially when it's fiction as well. You know, there's a level of honesty, authenticity, in the craft that speaks through, you know, the imagined realm, and yeah, it's so important, and it can be so graceful when it's done properly, you know, so touching and so inspiring.
Yeah, his textures are part of it too, I think, especially in Lovers Rock. The care that's being taken as the furniture is being moved out of the building. The food well
prepared.
Yeah. and the people in the room singing silly games, which sets up what comes later, so effortlessly, and to the point where even if it never picked up again, if that song hadn't been played, that scene initially would still be invaluable, because again, they're relaxed into it. They are being themselves together and enjoying the song. And then there's that one moment where one of the cooks hits the high note and everybody else just sort of stops because, you know, she can take it, let her have it. And it just plays the joy in her face as she's singing along. He gets it in. I mean, I don't doubt for a second that he's rebuilding a world he remembers, that this is his.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, as you're speaking, I'm thinking about the editing room, you know, because when you're in the editing room, you have choices. And it's there that you can also make you know, dishonest or inauthentic choices, but choosing those moments properly is also an extraordinary craft to bring out the essence of that story. It enriches, the experience. Yeah. No, it's also a beautifully edited film.
Yeah, and almost invisibly so, because so many takes are very long and very maintained. I mean, I know there's some tricking going on in there just so you can fit the camera in the room and make sure that the shot seems continuous. But there's, I don't know, what is it, 6 minutes of someone just dancing and losing himself?
Come on now. I mean,
that song plays, and it's
I mean, that's what we're living for, that's what the Marvel universe will never deliver. This is why, these are like the real living superheroes that achieve such greatness in with such simplicity.
Okay, now I do want to see a one-take Squirrel Girl movie just to see what happens, but I think that would be very expensive and almost impossible to make. But yes, I mean, the fact that it doesn't shy away from the danger of something like this, that at first there are police sirens outside constantly that no one pays any attention to. And I, of course, our time being what it is, I'm just braced for something absolutely awful to happen to these people. But the racism, that it doesn't shy away from the racism. There is some, and it's there, but it's an externalized thing that, because of the happiness in the space, nobody really thinks about. If you leave, it's there. But if you stay inside, you're safe and comforted by people. Everyone is protecting everyone else.
Yeah, I mean, they're in England, and just as, I'm here in America, I think we know that it's always present, but music is a sanctuary and the safe space that they find. And of course, it's not a safe space for everybody present, in the story, but music itself and when we are in the presence of each other and allowing ourselves to kind of ceremoniously lose ourselves in music, there is a sense of being able to let down some guards, sure.
I mean, there is an assault that happens in the film, and I don't want to overlook it, but I think it's very important to the narrative and the structure of the film that McQueen shows us that it can only happen outside of the house, that it has to be, she has to follow him away from the safety of the space
in order to,
and then of course they're disrupted, and it at least, it's I'm trying, I don't want to belittle the moment, because I'm sure that sort of thing is very real and a very real threat. But within the film, it happens and is diffused very, very quickly, because the community is still working, because people are looking out for each other, because people are caring about each other and checking on each other. And I think that's the takeaway. I remember when the film first came out, there was some attempts to say that it was downplaying the assault. But I think the point of this film is that the assault doesn't happen because of the strength of the people, of the community that's active in that space. And that later, when we see genuine intimacy, it's short-circuited by the return of, what England in 1980 perceived as order, by a white guy coming in and saying, "Stop that." Which, not he doesn't think he's acting maliciously, but we're allowed to see what it does. I think is what I'm trying to articulate. And I think that's actually even sadder in a way, to realize that they've left the safety of the party, that the party's literally over, and now they'll probably figure things out together and they'll probably be happy. But right now, in this moment, they're still subject to someone else's rules.
Yeah, I think that's a fair interpretation.
And it's a heartbreaker. And I'm glad, too, in a weird way, that the movie doesn't let us off the hook as viewers, that we have to understand why this is going on and why things are the way they are. I mean, all of Small Axe is about that, of course, but
exactly.
But I was, maybe worried's the wrong word, but since it was only the second one in the series, I was trying to figure out exactly what the arc and the intention of the whole thing was, and that it is so joyful compared to Mangrove, which is so, well, not. To have it snap back at the end and say, no, this is the mission statement. This is what they're all going to be about. It is important, right? That needs to happen.
It's powerful. It's powerful. It's powerful. And it also brings you back to even the crux of what the type of storytelling that's even happening within a lot of reggae. And I mean, Lovers Rock is a particular form of reggae that is, romance and love oriented, but it comes from a broader spectrum of music that is political, in its strength. And so of course, we have to get back to the roots of why we have to, what put us in the position to even come up with these sounds or these stories, and so, yeah, that's another brave choice by Mr. McQueen.
Yeah. Well, he does that.
It's necessary.
Right? Yeah. He just pushes into whatever the subject matter is and finds it. It sounds like something a film critic would. I mean, I am a film critic. It sounds like something I'm obliged to say, but that he can find the beating heart of whatever story he's telling, and then show you why you need to care as well. Like find the urgency in the moment, not just depict it. Yeah. And my wife is from the north of England, so I have some knowledge. I've been, steeped in Northern soul, and we both kind of we had different box sets of Trojan stuff when we met, but they've harmonized. So I'm aware of it, but I'm not going to pretend that I feel it or understand it on the same level as these characters. I can see, because of McQueen's camera, I can see why they need it so much. Just that moment where everyone starts chanting about the Mercury sound. And the film does not explain it. I know what it is. It's not important anyway. It's theirs, right? It's the thing that they are turning into a power chant because it's their thing. And they're also happy to hear it, and they're also happy to say it. And you're creating this portrait of, as does all of the Small Axe series, you're creating this portrait of resilience and spirit, and it's about survival. Right? Like it's about the continuance of it from episode to episode and story to story.
Well, yeah, that moment you're talking about makes me think of a poem, an old poem I have that begins, "Dear God, I wasn't breastfed, and most of my conversations with men seem to revolve around music. I'm no musician, but the pain has been instrumental," And what I mean there, and it is about that sense of, amongst these groups that have these experiences that are so heavy and nonstop, that begin way before, residential schools or George Floyd or anything like that. The levity that we find sometimes in discussing music. Like others find levity in going in about sports, I guess, I'm more on the music side.
Well, art is where we find it.
But yeah, there's a levity and excitement in going on about, the Mercury sound, or in finding that connection and trying to articulate why it's so important and what that means. I mean, I grew up in New York in the 80s. During the birth of hip hop, and we discussed, the sound of Rakim and Public Enemy and the Bomb Squad and KRS-One with the same, intensity and no, this is the definitive, and we could go on for hours, and many of us still are. And it's a beautiful and resonant part of the culture, and that's another example of something beautiful, simple, like you said, not even explained, to be shared, that gives you something that you didn't ask for, you didn't earn, but that gives you a glimpse into something beyond, the rudimentary points of a story.
Yeah. It's just a privilege to be able to glimpse it, to see it, to be part of it for a second, and be carried away with it. And this is sort of an awkward shift because it's such a recent film. Usually the podcast ends with the question, what of this work is there anything of this work that you've borrowed or incorporated or referenced or just been inspired by? But it is so new and I'm not totally sure how that works. Obviously, there's nothing in Akilla's Escape that can connect to it, but your score for that film is sort of the literal heartbeat of the film. It moves and rises with Akilla as he moves through the world. And in the flashbacks, its textures are different and in a really, really subtle way. And in that way, I think about Lovers Rock using the tempo of the songs and the DJ's choices to move the story along. Is that just a universal reality when you're crafting the score for something, or is it just something that worked here?
I can't speak of the universal reality because I haven't scored many films, but this was the second film that I scored, and truly, because of this sort of synergy that Charles and I had already established way before Akilla was written and thought up, the relationship that we both have to music and certain sounds. I knew. In fact, the way that this thing came about was he first presented the film to me as an actor, like, I want you to play this part. And then he said, like maybe a week later, I also want you to do the music. And I was in the midst of reading and rereading the script and was very much, I don't need to hear that right now. I'm focusing as an actor, and I can't even imagine what it would be like to create music for a film that I'm acting in. I don't know. But then, just a little while later, I was already in the process of collaborating with Robert Del Naja from Massive Attack. We were just throwing ideas back and forth online for nothing, just as friends. And as I'm reading the script, I start to imagine, like, wait a second, maybe some of these ideas have a home here at sea. And I shared a few ideas with Robert's permission with Charles, and he lost it. And he lost it. And then I had the weirdest experience of him sending me back edits with me in it and trying to craft the music to
yourself,
to myself, to these scenes. But it worked. It worked seamlessly and magically. And when I sent that back to him, it was a done deal, So it made a lot of sense. And then on the flip side of that was that, because of course we're all multifaceted here, is that simultaneously at that time I was in the process of completing the script for a musical that right after I shot Akilla, my wife and I went to Rwanda to shoot. It's called Neptune Frost, and it's a sci-fi musical. And so even in connection to Lovers Rock, you ask, about that inspiration and was I able to apply that inspiration to anything? Because of course I saw Lovers Rock after Akilla was finished. Mm-hmm. But I saw Lovers Rock as we were in the editing room, because for the entirety of the pandemic up until this moment, like we just finished coloration last week. We've been in the editing room with Neptune Frost, and because it is a musical that lives in the world of musical that I've been dying to experience. We talked about Once and the way that music can live in a film versus the traditional, Great White Way, Broadway, Yes. It is truly something to find a way to make those choices where the music, as the actors were losing themselves in it, can exist in a moment, And so, yeah, your question was about the score to Akilla's Escape, and I guess I kind of wove it into to Neptune Frost, just because I was already in the midst of connecting sound to music. I mean, sound to images, sound, you know. But as I was working on the score of Akilla, Neptune wasn't shot yet, and Small Axe had not been released. But yeah, Lovers Rock has certainly inspired, part of our process in the editing room for Neptune Frost. So it's all connected. For me, it's all connected.
No, that's wonderful. I love it when you find the continuum like that, when you can actually see where something starts and finishes.
Yep.
Oh, that's wonderful. And it's going to Cannes.
Yes, it was just announced that we have been selected for the Directors Fortnight competition at Cannes 2021. So we are on our way.
That's wonderful. Well, be safe with it. Have a great time. And hopefully it'll come to TIFF and, I can see you then.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
My thanks to Saul Williams, who stars in and scores Charles Officer's new film Akilla's Escape, which is now available on digital VOD platforms across North America. Thanks also to Laura Steen. She knows what she did. And check out Charles's episode, which we recorded when Akilla's Escape premiered at TIFF last fall. He picked Carlito's Way. It made sense. You can find Saul on Twitter at Saul Williams, all one word, and you can find Lovers Rock on Amazon Prime Video in the US and Canada, and on the BBC iPlayer in the UK. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Norm Wilner and elsewhere on the internet at nowtoronto.com, where I'm hosting a bunch of podcasts these days and writing the weekly Now Streaming newsletter, to which you can subscribe at nowtoronto.substack.com. And you can find this podcast on Twitter at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or wherever you've been enjoying us. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're there. I did an episode of The Big Story just last Friday about the return of appointment television. That was fun. Stay home, watch movies, wear a mask if you go out, get your shot when you can. I'll see you soon.